There's about 20 million millionaires in the US and just under 2 million millionaires in Canada, and that's only around 5% of the total population of each country. Sounds pretty low when you look at the numbers, right? And if we look at how many people have $1 million or more at retirement, including the value of their home, it's about 1 in 6. A little better, but still, around 85% of Americans don't retire as millionaires either. So the odds of becoming a millionaire are pretty low, and it's much lower if you're starting from a lower income bracket or also from a lower class. Now, class mobility in the US isn't as great as people think with all the talk about the American dream. Only 8% of kids raised in the bottom 20% are able to climb all the way up to the top 20% of adults. And remember, that top 20% isn't even millionaire level. And to add to all of those crazy stats, in the US, the top 5% of the population owns 75% of the entire financial wealth of the country, and the bottom 60% have less than 1% combined. But what if I told you that even though it sounds like there's no real hope for becoming a millionaire, and especially not with a low income, there is a way for you to make it happen. Seriously, not everyone can become a millionaire, because that's just not the way our system works. But if it's your goal, there are actions that you can take to make it more likely for yourself. And if you don't believe me, then you probably haven't heard of Sylvia Bloom before, a lifelong secretary that had close to $8 million when she died at 96. Now, no one in her life even knew she was a millionaire until she passed, and she gave almost $6.5 million to a local charity. And this was a huge shock to her family, who saw her barely spend any money on herself and take the subway to work every day. And that's kind of the whole point of being the secret millionaire or even the millionaire next door. They're people with lower income streams who don't spend all the money that they make. Instead, they invest and they watch their money grow. And if you want to know how that works, then give this video a big like down below because it really helps out the channel, and then we'll jump into it.
Okay, so there's one really big misconception out there that really holds people back from actually becoming a millionaire. And it's that people think that investing is just for the rich. You know, it's kind of funny because when you look at a rich person, usually you're like, well, you know, you're already rich, so obviously investing is a no-brainer. And then on top of that, you're probably thinking to yourself that you obviously have to have a lot of money to invest in the first place, so why even bother? Now, if that's what you're thinking, let me just start off by saying that this is wrong, like completely wrong. The entire point of you investing your money is to grow your money. And when you really think about it, there's only so much that you can do to save or even cut down from your budget to then save some more. But if you were to instead put those savings into investing, you could like dramatically increase the amount of money that you have over time. Let's start with an example. So if you were to make $50,000 a year and you were able to save 10% of your income, and if you just were to save that money, you'd have $250,000 after 50 years. And that's without adjusting for inflation. So if it's at the regular 2%, you'd actually have less than $250,000. Now, if instead you kept that same savings rate of $5,000 a year, but invested it and got an average annual return of 8%, in 50 years, you'd have $2.8 million. That's $250K versus $2.8 million for investing the same amount of money instead of saving it. Now, remember that this example is based on having a low salary and not even increasing how much you're actually investing over time. Basically, there's two really important things to notice from this example, and obviously there's the investing piece and there's also the 50 years piece. But we'll get back to that a little bit later. Anyways, guys, that's the first step in becoming a millionaire on a low salary. You have to first realize that you'll need to invest your money to make it happen. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind that we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves on this one, because before you can actually invest your money, you need to have money put aside to invest in the first place. And there's two main ways to get that money and put it aside.
Number one, you can budget your current income. Now, let's say you make $50,000 a year, but you also spend $50,000 a year. Then you're gonna have no money set aside to either save or invest. But if you're able to keep just 10% of your income aside to invest by reducing what you spend, that is gonna have a huge impact on your future net worth. Now, only if you actually end up going ahead and investing that money, of course. Now, there is a limit to how much you can actually reduce your expenses, and especially if you have a lower income. At the end of the day, you're gonna need to spend on things like your living costs, your food, other essentials, and there's gonna be that point where you can't reduce anymore. So number two, you could increase your income. Now, there's a few different ways that you could do this, right? Either by maximizing your income in your current job or career by negotiating your salary, getting a raise, by job hopping, different things like that. Or by starting a side hustle and having multiple income streams. And if you're thinking that a side hustle seems like way too much work, you don't want to do that, we're gonna explain how even just a small amount of money on the side could have a huge impact on growing your wealth. Let's look at it this way. If you made an extra $2,500 a year, even if you only had a salary of $50,000, it might not feel like that much money, and you could probably easily think of a lot of different ways to spend $2,500 a year. But if you made an extra $2,500 in a year and invested the entire amount on top of the $5,000 you were already investing, that would make a way bigger impact. Just look at these numbers. Investing $5,000 a year for 50 years with that 8% return is $2.8 million. But doing the same thing with $7,500 a year brings it up to $4.3 million instead. There's your big impact. This is exactly why your savings rate, or how much money you're actually keeping aside to invest, is a really important factor in growing your wealth. So steps 1 and 2 are to know that you need to invest your money to grow your wealth and become a millionaire, and also to maximize that savings rate and how much money you have to even put into your investments to begin with.
Okay, so I want to take a quick second here to really clarify how those 2 steps can turn people into millionaires. So far, we've talked about your income versus your expenses, and if your expenses are less than your income, then you have a positive cash flow of money left over. That's the first goal, to have money left over after you pay off your rent, your groceries, and stuff like that. The next battle is what you need to do with that leftover money. And here's where the rich are actually pretty much separated from everyone else. Typically, what you'll see a lot of people do is they'll spend that leftover money on what they call a good purchase, which in reality just becomes another expense. And honestly, this could include, let's say, even buying a car and having a car loan. Cars are not investments, they are depreciating assets. And even on the flip side, it could be you, let's say, going out and buying your primary residence, right? Again, not an investment, especially right now, if it's costing you more money than what it's actually bringing in. The way that I see it is that often at times people will be super focused on saving for something and not really look at the expenses that actually come with what that specific purchase is. For example, if you're super focused on saving and you save, let's say, like $30,000 and then you use that money to buy a car, guess what? All of a sudden those savings are gone and now you have all these monthly expenses that are higher, which makes it even harder to keep saving. Now, what the people who actually want to become wealthy do is they buy investments instead. And those purchases add to their future income instead of growing their list of expenses. So this could include investing in the stock market, real estate, getting dividends, interest, rental profits, or they could even invest in a business that becomes an additional income stream. This doesn't mean that you can never buy a car or a house if you want to be rich, but if you can hold off and do that after you use your first round of savings to invest in things that actually grow your income, you're going to be more likely to become wealthy and have more money in the future. So at this point, hopefully you're thinking, wow, we get it. Invest your money and hold off on purchases that bring you more expenses instead of more income. But how do you actually invest? In what and how? Well, there's a few things that all millionaires who started with low incomes have in common.
Now, step number 3 is to start investing early and to keep investing for the long term. So if we take it back to Sylvia Bloom for a second, she did something pretty interesting. She worked as a secretary on Wall Street, and she'd often purchase investments for her boss and therefore knew exactly what he was investing in and when. So after buying for him, she'd simply just purchase the same stocks for herself, just in a smaller amount. Now, not everyone's gonna have access to a Wall Street boss and can see exactly what it is that they're investing in, but luckily you don't have to have that at all. You just need to follow the same principles. That includes investing early, investing often, and also not timing the market. Now, we're in the era of index funds and ETFs, and luckily we know that passive investments outperform active ones 90% of the time, which means that you can find the ETF or ETFs that you want to invest in, have a diversified portfolio, and put the same amount of money in every month for decades and see that strong average return over time. Now, the earlier you start, the higher your return will be in the future. That's part of the magic of compound interest. If we stick to our same example that we've been going off of so far, you can invest just $5,000 per year for 50 years and see a $2.8 million return. But if you wait until you're much older and instead you only give yourself 20 years to invest your money, then you'd have to invest $63,000 a year to see that same return of $2.8 million. Now, it sounds pretty impossible to invest $63K a year on a low income especially, but $5,000 a year is a bit more doable, or at least it's possible. Now, this is exactly why time is your #1 best friend and your best asset when it comes to becoming a millionaire on a low salary. And you need to use it to your advantage. Please do not waste time and do not hurt your future wealth. And remember that the key to all of this is to consistently invest. Sylvia Bloom invested from 1947 to the early 2000s, and that means that she invested through more than 10 recessions and a ton of market crashes, and she didn't panic sell or stop investing when the times were down. Now, presumably her boss, and therefore herself, kept buying consistently and saw the benefit of not panicking, because the best days in the market follow the worst days in the market. And as long as your investments are in diversified and good long-term options, then when the market recovers, as it always has in the past, you get the benefit of buying on sale, and you didn't miss the best days of return either. It's a win-win. Now, on top of making a strong average return in the long term by consistently investing and also by starting early, people who become millionaires also should ideally utilize low-cost options. They use tax-advantaged accounts to save on taxes in the future. They look for low-fee options for both the investments that they buy and also for the platforms that they use to buy them on. And overall, they keep as much of that total return as they can for themselves. And if you want to hear more about that, then you can check out some of our past investment videos.
All right, guys, if you want to become a millionaire and you have a low salary, you definitely have some odds to overcome. Statistically, you shouldn't be able to do it. But if you have the knowledge and you have the discipline to actually increase your savings rate and you invest that money early and consistently and for the long term, you can be a millionaire. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. And if you're looking for more content on how to actually invest literally from step 1, check out our videos after this. You know, we've got a ton of content on investing, on literally the basics. So yeah, make sure you check it out. And as usual, make sure you show us some love down below with a like. You know, it helps out the channel a ton. Make sure you subscribe. And yeah, if you haven't seen any of our previous videos, make sure you check them out next door. We will be back. You know the vibes. Let's go.